Hello?
Hello, good evening.
Hi. Is my audio okay? Is there like any buzzing noises at all? Or is it fine?
I hear no buzzing whatsoever, which is very good.
Right, that's good. Because basically I've got because I do these calls on my phone. I've got like a headset which I attach to my phone, and I noticed that the battery was at 67%. Now, I'm one of those people who, if it's like below 70%, it's like, oh, that's far too low. So I've got like a portable charger with me. And I know that in the past when I've streamed and I've got the controller plugged in, it makes a buzzing noise. So I didn't know if it
Hmm.
was the same sort of deal, but it's good to know that it isn't.
No, I've had to say your audio quality is fantastic. So what kind of headset are you using?
Oh, it's a Turtle Beach headset. I got it in 2015.
Turtle Beach.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Because I think your audio quality is on par with mine, and I've got a fancy, uh, I say fancy. Okay, it's like an entry level microphone, but it's like a dedicated standing on the desk type of microphone. But I've got it duct taped to a gooseneck bendy arm, which is clipped onto my
Yeah.
desk. So the whole setup is rather rudimentary, but the audio quality is good.
I mean, when I'm editing, when I edit the audio, well, I don't edit the audio itself, but when I edit it so that I make, I put it into like the video file and everything, you can always tell which side is mine because that's where the lines are bigger.
Uh-huh. I think that just could be my voice. My voice is just naturally lower than yours, so the lines for you go up higher, perhaps,
I think it's just louder. I think my end
or
comes
just
through
louder.
louder.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe.
Um. Yeah. So on your like recording thing, do my lines go wider on yours as well? Like as you're
Yeah,
recording
definitely.
this?
So, okay, so I can. Well, you'll be able to see this if you play it back. Because oh no, I usually send you just the video, the audio, not the video. But my thing goes to on this list of minus on this line of minus 60 to 0 decibels. Mine goes around to minus 30. And now, if you say something,
Hello, this is me saying something.
you go to around minus 25, minus 20. So you go a full X amount higher. I'm not good at maths, but you go higher. Yours is definitely louder.
Right.
Well, I could move my microphone closer, but I've got this set up where I you don't I don't know what to call it. It's kind of like the surfer dude symbol, you know, when you hold your hand, when you stretch your palm, your thumb you stretch one way, your little finger, your pinky finger you stretch the other way.
Oh, yeah, I
The
know what you mean.
the mahalo dude symbol. Yeah, so I do that and I put my thumb by my mouth, my pinky finger by the microphone, and that's the distance I should hold it. If I go closer, my whole system will be ruined, and
Right.
I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, so it is sweltering here.
Yes,
Um,
it has been hot.
yeah, it's very, very hot over here. Today, when I've been at the computer, I've had the fan on. My computer's been producing a lot of heat as well, sadly. And but it's normal. It keeps me warm during the winter, so
Yeah, it's not too bad here, like at the moment. It has been over the last week. We've just had some rain and we had a lot of rain. Was it yesterday, I think? Yeah, yesterday we had quite a lot of rain.
hmm.
But
Well,
that's good.
I've noticed. Sorry, I noticed. I learnt that. Well, everyone laughs at the Brits because we live in a country that is fairly cold, all things considered, and it rains more than it doesn't, according to some people.
Yeah.
Those who haven't been to England. So I don't know. I don't think it's that bad. I mean, Russians believe that England, or especially London, is a place of fog, of permanent fog. They think fog is always it's always foggy in Britain and in London,
Yeah.
and it's just not.
See, that's interesting. Because I remember, did you ever watch Count Duckula?
No.
Right. Well, Count Duckula was the cartoon that I was really into when I was really young. And it was one of those things where I never saw it on TV, but I had like a few videos of it. And in one of the episodes that I had, they went to London because they live in Transylvania and they've got this teleporting castle that can take them around the world. And there was one episode where they appeared in London and
Mm.
and they were walking around and they were lost because it was so foggy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, see, I don't I think it might be just like an aesthetic from old literature, Dickens maybe, or something, that London just seems
Probably.
eternally foggy.
Probably all like the smoke from the
Oh
industrial stuff
yeah.
and all that.
Oh yeah,
That's probably where it comes from.
possibly. So I learned that in Britain, everyone laughs at us that we can't handle the heat, and when it's just 25 degrees in Britain, we're all just immobilized.
Yeah,
But the problem is that our houses aren't designed for heat.
yeah, that's
So
exactly right.
our houses are designed to keep the heat in, as opposed to
Yeah,
keep the heat out. And I remember this is a short story from when I lived in Germany. I remember I rented a room in this house that was owned by a nice old couple. The man was from Switzerland and the woman was from Spain, and they were very nice. But the room they rented had these sun shades, sun visors. You know, on the outside you can roll down the screen and it blocks the sunlight. And I just remember when I first moved in, I didn't really understand what they were talking about. They just said, "Oh, this thing, it's broken," because it was on like an electric remote. You press a button and it was supposed to lower. And
yeah,
I didn't think much of it. But then after a few days of living there, I realized, oh, how right ruddy hot it is. And I
yeah,
was just trying to figure out what could I possibly do to cool this room down because it's too hot for me. And then eventually I got around to trying to fix this thing. Maybe I was just no, actually, I think maybe I was just bored one day and I was just playing with this thing, seeing if I can fix it because he said that it was broken. And yeah, so I pulled on the small rope. It kind of came unstuck, and then the electronic button, the button started working, so I could lower it, and that made a huge difference in keeping the room cool. Just blocking all the sunlight.
yeah, definitely. My bedroom can get, I mean, according to the thermometer that's on my clock, it's 31 degrees. Now, I don't know how accurate that is. I do know that it is absolutely true that my room is hotter than all the other places that I have, like, that I go to on a regular basis. That's definitely true. Um, but yeah, I don't know how accurate that is. And I find like in a way I'm sort of getting used to it, even though I still really, really don't like it. I've never liked summer.
No, uh, I'm a bit strange. My favorite season is autumn, definitely, because it's
Yeah,
just cool and it's you have some warm days, you have some colder days, you have more rain. There are nice colors everywhere. That's definitely my favorite. I remember when I lived at my mum's house, my room was right on the top floor, and I had a roof window and things like that. And in the winter, it was freezing, so that when I was at the computer typing, my fingers would just kind of go slow, would function
yeah,
slower and slower and slower until it was just actually painful to type. But in the summer, it was just so sweltering. It's
yeah,
unbearable.
yeah, totally. So have you got any like game updates or anything? You've been playing anything interesting?
Game updates. Okay, this is something for me. It's progress. It's very slow progress, but it's progress. I installed Dark Souls 3 and I gave it a whirl, and
Right.
I'm dreadful at it, just as I was before. And I decided I am not going to put myself through this right now when I'm perfectly happy to play other games. I'll wait until a better time.
Did I ever tell you my experience with Dark Souls 1?
No, I don't think so.
Right. Okay. Now, this is a thing that's it's sort of infuriating, and I'm sure there's plenty of other examples of this, and I'm sure everybody, well, maybe not everybody, but I'm sure people in general have got their own examples of this, and you might have examples of this as well, right? So the first boss, I died against that boss several times, like close to 20 times, right? And I was saying like, oh, this boss is so difficult. This boss, oh, I can't do it. And people were saying to me, oh, well, when you enter the fight, you can, if you avoid it, if you go like through this corridor, you can appear like higher up in the room, and you can jump down and stab it like as you're dropping down, and that takes off a whole chunk of its health. Right now, what really annoyed me, right, is that they thought they were helping me by saying like, "Oh, well, here's a trick you can do." But what annoyed me was that I figured that out straight away.
Hmm.
So it's like they heard me complain about, well, maybe not complain. I was complaining, but they heard that I was struggling. They heard me talk about how much I'm struggling, and they assumed that I was participating in an event that was harder than what it was. It's like, oh, well, if you're doing bad, it must be this thing. Because if you did
Hmm.
that thing, then obviously you'd be doing good. Like, no, 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 I've been doing that thing from the start. I'm just not good.
Yeah. I'm when I was younger, I think I would be I think I'd find it hard to accept that I'm just simply not good at something, and I try to
Yeah.
prove that I'm a lot better. And I remember when I was still at school, the Call of Duty craze had just begun. Call of Duty 4. This is 2007, I think, 2006, 2007, perhaps. And I just recall I always played my Delta Force games, and then all of a sudden I'm playing on a with a games controller, PlayStation 3 controller, and I'm playing on a completely different game, and I'm doing very, very badly, but I didn't want to admit that I'm struggling. I just wanted to spend a stupid amount of time getting getting good at the game in order to do that. Whereas nowadays, I just don't care. I am happy just to say, yeah, I'm really bad at Dark Souls. I don't particularly mind.
Did you have that experience growing up where you'd play a game and you just sort of had this assumption, you just thought to yourself, like, I'm amazing at this game, nobody can beat me. And then later in life, you realize, oh, wait, no, I'm not amazing. I was just very much limited to who else I
Hmm.
was visible to. So, like, all those people, like friends and family, I was much better than them. But on the grand scheme of things, no, not really.
Yeah, so okay, for example, um, I remember playing. It actually goes both ways. So firstly, I'll say I remember playing FIFA, and the I played FIFA '09, I think, with my brothers, and I was by far the best, and they hated playing against me. They played against each other, and they enjoyed that. But playing against me, I started playing with teams that were far worse than they were, and than they were using, and that was fine. I mean, I wasn't the kind of person who would just win every single game 10-0. I would
Yeah.
make it fun for myself as well. It's kind of like a study conducted by gorillas. Uh, I think that the gorillas want to play, let's say there's an older gorilla and a younger gorilla, and they both want to play, and they wrestle. The older gorilla, the bigger gorilla, will allow the younger one to win sometimes, simply because it knows that if the smaller one, loses all the time, then the smaller one won't want to play. And so, on that basis, I I played worse just to keep the game going, basically. But then I played against some of my brother's friends, and one of my brother's friends, who actually, to be fair, he played on a different console. He didn't play on the PlayStation. He played on the Xbox. So, and also he played on FIFA, on that FIFA at least, you could choose the speed of the game, and I always played it on slow, so the ball travels slower, you run slower, whereas he played on fast. Yeah, and anyway, I got my bottom handed to me, as the kids say. I was absolutely dreadful.
You know, you reminded me of a story, and I think at some point, or maybe at multiple points, we should have these episodes, as it were, where we just go through like random memories and all that. But you reminded me there was a time I one of the games that I was really good at when I was younger was Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine.
Okay.
Um, and are you familiar with that game?
No, I'm not at all. But it's
Right.
Sonic, I imagine.
Are
Sonic
you familiar?
Universe.
Are you familiar with Puyo Puyo?
You've spoken about it before.
Right. So basically, it's like one of those games where it's based on it's like a Tetris style game where you've got like these things coming from the top and you have to like match them up and all
Hmm.
that. And the idea is that if you get like these beans, so you can they come down in pairs of two, and you can like flip them round and you like lay them down, and the very it's all like they're not attached. So say if you put one down and you've got like the one on the left is on like a higher ledge, then the one to the right will like will drop off. And so if you get four connected of the same color, they will disappear, and the ones above that will drop down. And the idea is you only get like a big chain going, so you get like some of them disappear, and then that makes others fall, that makes them disappear, and
Hmm.
as much as you can. And the more that you do this, you send like your opponent these little blank beans that are just there to take up space
Hmm.
that they have to like manually remove. So the idea is you have to like build up combos and everything to send all these all these beans to your opponent. Now, I understood this. I sort of came to grasps with this. Dr. Box makes me and Bean Machines to basically just like a Dr. Robotnik themed version of this game.
Hmm.
So, um, whenever I play against somebody else, they just do like the bare minimum. They'd find four of the same color, match them, and that was it as far as they were concerned. But I understood how the combos worked. So I matched up the combos and I always won. But there was one time I made like this challenge for my brother because we did these little things. I did it with my brother. I did it with a friend that I had in primary school as well, where we'd sort of we'd set up like say like for example a maze like on paper or something like that. You have to like go through the maze and you'd find keys and different things and like you got to make different choices. And it got to the point where we integrated like games into this.
Oh,
So
wow.
one that I made was that you've got these three opponents and you have to beat them at rock paper scissors like so many times, but you had to manually collect the rocks, the papers, and the scissors to use. And the way that you collected them was that you had to beat them in a game of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. So I was acting out like these characters.
Oh, wow.
And I made one of them that was like this really like posh, like this fancy character who like, oh, I'm talking like this, right? And this character was like, I'm going to hit you with my combo of three. Oh, combos of three, that's my thing. And this was like once you defeated this character, that gave you the opportunity to then go and fight the second character, who was like a motorbiker. Like,
Hmm.
I heard you. Uh, you can't withstand my combos of two. And then the last one was just like, oh, I don't know what a combo is. I just like the pretty colors. No, but so this was my idea of like making it like a fun like alternate challenge. So I'm
Hmm.
making all these characters, but my first character was far too powerful. So even when I tried to like tone it down, I was still winning all the games.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that's a memory.
That is a memory. That's really creative. It's incredible.
Yeah.
How old? So
Well,
you said primary school. How old would you have been?
at that point, um, oh, this might have been around 10, I'm
Hmm.
guessing. I don't know. Because my friend we used to make, like, find the clues. We'd, like, hang bits of paper with clues on around the house. We'd do things like that. And, like, outside on the climbing frame, we'd make game shows where you've got to do challenges to get points.
Hmm.
It was the sort of stuff that we did.
Yeah, but I'm thinking more precisely integrating video games into your non-video games as
Yeah,
just like part of a challenge.
yeah,
It's really
that,
unusual.
yeah, that came later on, I think. I think I sort of stumbled upon that later on, like upon that idea.
Hmm. I really
Mm.
remember just a real distinction between video games and non-video games. So I think I only ever started playing with kids my own age, playing video games with kids my own age. Uh, yeah, maybe near the end of primary school, but especially when I had a PlayStation 3.
This kind of the thing is, right, okay, we can kind of roll this into the idea of the topic that I've got, but there's also something else that I want to talk about, which I'm going to roll into the topic.
Okay.
So, I have been playing Magic the Gathering Arena online. Since we last talked, I mentioned playing. I think it was last time. I was telling you, it was either last time or the time before. I was telling you about how I was playing Magic online with a friend, just on this free bit of software where you can just manually have to you move the card and everything, and how we chose these really top end decks, and we were just confused all the time because everything presented us with too many options that we didn't know what we were doing. So I've been playing Magic Arena, which is sort of like a free to play version of Magic. And now it's been a long time since I played it. I used to play it physically, and I played it for about 2 or 3 years. I think it was like 2014. I think I started 2014, or maybe it would be in the start of 2014, and then it was around 2016, around that time when I stopped. So I started playing Arena, and there's two online Magic games you can play. There's Magic Online, which is it's more like the real thing in terms of you buy cards have like their own value and everything, whereas Arena is more like its own in like what's the word, like enclosed economy, as it were. So it does a lot of the free to play trappings that we see a lot in these games, such as you're going to say something?
Yeah, that plague our existence, I'll say. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. So it's got it's got two currencies. You've got gold and you've got gems, and you can buy the mastery pass so that so you've got two lines of rewards as you level up. The free one, which had things sporadically scattered around, and then the master one, the paid for one, where you have all of the different. You've got loads of different things that go along the way. Now, what I really like about this game, I think this version of Magic is closer to a skill-based system rather than a monetary style system, because individual cards have no value. You can't buy cards, you can't sell cards. Whereas in real Magic, you've got some cards, it all depends on what format you're playing and whether they're legal in certain formats and all that. But you have some cards, you'll go up against somebody and it's oh yeah, I've got this deck, and you'll find out that their deck costs a few £100 or whatever. And even though I really like the game, that's part of it that I've never liked. That's always rubbed me the wrong way. When I was starting playing, I remember there was someone who I used to play against who was probably the best. Well, yeah, I would say the best, probably one of the best skill wise that was playing there. But also, he was one of the ones that spent money on decks. It was really nice as well. He used to always apologize every time he won, which was always. And
is that a good thing?
Well, no, but you could tell it was sincere. It wasn't oh, I'm so sorry. It was he was sincere. And there was one time I was looking through his deck, and I was thinking, and I saw all the cards, the symbols, oh, all of these cards are of the have the gold symbol, so they're all rare. So with Arena, you've got free events where you just have a game with whatever cards you've got. You can partake in events which cost either gold or gems, and in them you can win gold or gems. And just today I had a draft. So that is where you don't start with a deck, but you're provided packs. You have to go around and build a deck out of the packs that you get and all that. So it's very fun. And I do like that the system isn't set up so that cards have a value. You just get cards when you get them. I mean, there's still the rarity, of course, but you can do certain things to like craft cards, and you can buy packs and you can buy things to craft cards with, but that is tied strictly to the rarity. And with the way that this game's set up is that if you want to, you can just play it for free because you can do the daily quest, you can earn the gold, and then you can spend the gold to do events which can maybe get you gems and all that. Of course, there's a skill level involved, but overall, I really like it. I don't intend to spend any money on it. If I do, I would just the first order of business would be the $5 starter pack, which is just like a bunch of like high value things. But I don't plan to, and I don't like the idea of that system. But as far as Magic goes, it's much better
Hmm.
than it's much more for me than any other type of Magic that I'm familiar with. And I was comparing this to uh, the older Pokemon trading card game on the Game Boy Color, and how I really liked that when I had it as a kid. And one of the things that's always stood out to me about digital card games is that we're not really going to go back to those days where you can just earn all the cards just by playing, just by being like of an average skill level, just like grinding it out, because it's a totally different world. And so the topic, and this is very again a very open topic, is just about how things have changed. And I don't want this to just be a complaining about all free to play games. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah. But I'm bringing this up because I know we've talked about it before, and it's
Hmm.
definitely worth talking about. Um, I don't want to just talk about how, oh, it's so annoying that everything's like free to play and microtransactions because, yeah, like I agree those things are bad. Loot boxes, I agree they're all bad. Um, and there's definitely more nuance there that we could go into. But I was just thinking about how just trends.
Hmm.
Um, so, like a series that has changed over time, maybe, or just something that you've noticed, like say, I mean, one example that you've talked about is like with Forza games about how they keep rewarding you, they keep saying well done and all that. So it was Forza, was it Forza Horizon that you said did
Yeah,
that?
I tried Forza Horizon 5 with a Microsoft Game
Yeah,
Pass, and it was a brilliant game. Just like mechanically, it was really nice to play. Lovely visuals. The physics seemed all right. Unbelievable, completely bonkers out of this world, but they were fun. But just what turned me off was the way the game rewards the player.
yeah. Just for like even if you haven't won, wow, well
You,
done, you came last. Here's a prize.
you came last. Well, we're still going to throw a party in your name, and we're still going to give you three cars as a prize. Great. Cheers.
Yeah. So, uh, do you have any ideas of like something that you've noticed that's like changed,
Uh,
like maybe like in general, maybe?
yes. Well, things. I have got an idea about something that's changed, and it's changed. It's not going to go back to the way it was because I think the market has changed. What people expect from video games has changed. And if we talk about, okay, so I think there's a lot of things that I'll first explain what it is. So
Okay.
multiplayer matchmaking versus servers. So
Right.
I'll briefly explain. I think I've mentioned this before, either in streams or in one of these calls. Um, Specifically in my case, I used to enjoy going on playing shooting games that have servers. So you browse servers, a server that you want to go on. Maybe a server has particular maps that you like. Maybe a server has particular rules that you like. If I can name a few of these, just as an example, Delta Force games. old Call of Duty games have had servers. I think they actually had a fusion of matchmaking and servers, the same as actually another game that I really enjoyed, Battlefield 4, where you can just matchmake and it will send you to a random server, or you can browse the servers and choose one that you want to play on. Now, servers are, my opinion, are fantastic. You build a small community around them. You get to know the people that you play with. Um, if you're in a community where you all know each other, it doesn't necessarily get stale because new people are capable of, browsing the server or clicking matchmaking and stumbling upon your server, so it doesn't get completely stale. And also because you know everybody, you don't have the curse of the anonymous online user who is just an absolute an absolute terror, who is just a horrible, horrible person to be around, and who has no remorse for their actions simply because it's anonymous. They can do whatever they want. So, for example, on consoles, Call of Duty lobbies, because Call of Duty on consoles, I don't think had servers. They just had matchmaking. Now, nowadays, I can give you an example actually. Counter-Strike Global Offensive is the current latest in the series. It's a shooting game, rooty tooty, point and shooty. Everyone knows what Counter-Strike is. Um, Now, when I started playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive, this was in 2012, 2013. I actually was in Russia at the time. I was studying, or rather not studying. I was playing Counter-Strike. And um, at the beginning, that game had matchmaking, but the matchmaking was quite poor, and we enjoyed playing on servers. We would just join a server together. We would just go on a server together, and this would be something someone prepared. It would have strange maps or whatever. But over time, Valve, the developer, really, really polished their matchmaking service, and they made it so that really there's very little reason go on the server browser and look for servers, even though it still exists, even though no one's forcing you to go on the matchmaking. But they made matchmaking so attractive that it really killed the culture. I don't think it killed the servers because there are still servers still do exist, but they killed the culture of going on servers. So today in 2022 and even 6 years ago in 2016, if I can do my maths, um, even in 2016, whenever I was invited to play Counter-Strike with anybody, it was, hey, should we queue up and do matchmaking or something? Hey, let's try and get a higher rank today. Hey, I really need a win now, so can you help us win? Those were the kind of requests that people in my friends list on Steam sent me. And for me, playing video games was more of kind of like a social event, a social exercise, and it was supposed to be relaxing. Whereas this matchmaking and ranking up, so I think I should separate these two. Matchmaking just simply means the game automatically finds people for you to play against. But ranked matchmaking is a step further. It tries to pair you against people who are slightly better than you. Yeah, so you improve, I suppose, but so that it's always competitive. And I believe you play, is it Age of Empires?
Yeah, because as you've been talking, I've been thinking that just makes me think of Age of Empires because you can play a ranked game, in which case it will matchmake you with someone of a similar score. That's the intent at
Mm-hmm.
least. But there's also unranked games, and you can basically go into like different lobbies and
Yeah,
set up games
exactly.
individually, and that won't affect your rank. That's sort of like just like a friendly game.
So I don't want to just complain about this because even though I have fond memories of the old system, the new system has got its benefits. So by removing control over the server from individuals to having, one centralized rule set, um, you don't, for example, you don't click on join game or you don't look on the server browser and join a game and then find out that, the server owner has banned all of these things that you didn't know about. So imagine uh, going on Age of Empires and you join a random lobby and then you find out that half of the units you would normally use and build, they're banned. And you build them, you set them out, you attack the server owner and he says, wait, those are banned, and then just removes you from the game. That's the kind of thing
Yeah.
people have to put up with, in especially in Battlefield 4, in Battlefield games that was notorious. And so, well, what did EA do? EA Dice, they just removed private servers. And so that's one thing. Another thing, obviously, I think it's player attention to keep people coming back to the same game and keep people interested in it. This idea of a ranked mode is very important, and I think it's been absolutely instrumental to Counter Strike's success. Oh, that and the child gambling, of course. Um,
Oh yeah.
but so I understand it has got its good sides.
Yeah. Well, even just speaking of like Age of Empires, because as you know, I don't really play multiplayer much. In fact, the only two multiplayer games online that I really enjoy are the two that I don't know, that's not true, but the two I enjoy the most are the two that I've been playing recently. And I am definitely more inclined to just go to ranked match, just have a game with someone who's deemed of an equivalent skill level.
Hmm.
But I do think about like with Age of Empires 2, because obviously they've gone through a few renditions now. So there was like the originals on the discs, and we had the MSN gaming zone back when MSN was a thing,
Oh, I remember
and
the good days.
yeah, and since then, recently with like HD and then the definitive edition, which is the newest one, we've got Steam,
Hmm.
so it all works through Steam, and so like if I am to play Age of Empires 2, I could do a ranked match, or I could like go into a lobby. But back when it was just on the discs, it was just the lobbies. So
Hmm.
you'd go in and find a game, and you'd find the thing is you'd find more. Now I haven't been in the lobbies as much lately, but it seems to me that the older ones seem to be more creative because there's a lot more to do with custom scenarios.
Hmm.
So, um, so a custom scenario is based because usually you usually you start a game and the map is randomly generated with, and based on whatever map type you choose, there's certain rules as to like how many resources there are and how much they're spread out and all that sort of stuff. But with custom scenarios, it's very specifically crafted. So everything is basically like a level editor, but every like individual thing is edited in.
Hmm.
And you can put in your own like event triggers and all that. And you'd have these ones where, like I remember a big one. But there's quite a lot. I remember the one being quite a lot, but the big one I remember was like Castle Blood, where it's just got you've got this arena and everyone's got a load of castles, and you just got to get each every player picks a random civilization, so you don't know what your particular like unique castle-based unit is going to be,
Hmm.
and you just go out there and just have a big fight,
Hmm.
just go to the arena and just wipe each other out, and then once you've got like so many kills, you'll be rewarded with like I can't remember like some stat bonuses, or and
Hmm.
eventually you'll get like a village so you can start building things. Um, and that was, and I've never thought Castle Blood was all that great, all things considered. I thought it was mostly just for sure in a way. It was just like, yeah, you enter this arena, you've got one type of unit, and they're all just like fighting each other endlessly.
Hmm.
But I never thought it was that good of a scenario.
And was that someone?
But
Is that something that someone made? Some just random person on the
yes,
internet decided to make that.
yeah, someone just
Hmm.
made it. But of course, I do have fond memories of it, and I think, you know, those types of things aren't really as prevalent these days.
Yeah, and it's. I think the same. I think the same is true, in the games that I've played. That there is less and less willingness to play. Strange. Strange community creations. So going back to Counter Strike, I
Yeah,
remember the only other Counter Strike game I really played with any for any significant amount of time was Condition Zero, and Condition Zero was like the least popular of the series. And whenever I played online there, those maps were just everyone would. It would seem that all many of the servers that I played on had just very strange maps, and it would take me, it'd take me a good hour to get used to what I'm playing, to get used to get used to the map that I'm playing on, and then it would be a little bit more competitive, or it'd be a little bit better. But part of the fun was simply experiencing new things, whereas today Counter-Strike is just about really refining and honing, becoming 0.2% better and faster, and you know, being able to outsmart your opponent, watching online videos of tactics the professionals use and all that kind of stuff. And really, I don't have time for that. I would much
Yeah.
prefer just to play something. So is that something that you do with Age of Empires? Do you research strategies and try to get better in that way, or do you just do it by playing?
I do it by playing mostly, although I have gotten to a point where it's like I do notice that there are certain things I don't do just because I'm not in the habit of it. Like I won't make cavalry just because I don't know why. It just doesn't like occur to me. But I have sort of like attempted to like look into like what units counter each other, like counter other units. So for example, it's like I now know that if my opponent is going into cavalry, then if I make spearmen, they will work as a good counter. And I'm generally finding that based on my rank on my elo, um, I started it at like 700, and then I went down. So like the higher numbers is better. So I started at 700, and then I dipped down, and then I sort of crept back up. If you remember, I was saying before that there were the nomad maps where you don't start with a base, you just start with a few villages, and you've got to sort of work around that. And when those were in the cycle, I found that I was doing good at those. Well, since they're out of the cycle now, I'm still high up and I'm maintaining that rank. I'm maintaining that position. So I think I am
Hmm.
picking up on things, even if it is not so like obvious to me. Like as I'm playing, I just sort of my instincts get better, I
Hmm.
think, and I
Yeah.
think my reaction times are better as well. Like I feel like, especially since I've been playing it recently, the definitive edition, I know more hotkeys. I can more easily like quickly like jump to the town center or
Hmm.
quickly jump to the barracks, and yeah, I'm definitely getting better. I've had like 110 games now, I think, roughly.
Hmm. You just reminded me of something from when I was when I played Counter-Strike with my friends. And I just remember I uh I don't know, I had a fair amount of experience playing shooting games on the computer. And I remember when I started playing Counter-Strike, I was quite bad. And I had one friend who was really into it and really wanted to get better, really wanted uh to, improve. He watched loads and loads of videos and really researched and learnt how to play Counter-Strike. And I just remember when we played together online, I would just kind of feel like a vessel. I'd have whispering in my ear telling me what to do, and then I would just carry out these instructions. I felt a bit like a robot. And admittedly, that method of learning was a bit slower than had I actually, gone through the effort, used my brain, and done the research myself. It took
Yeah,
it took a lot longer, and I'm sure it gave him quite a few grey hairs. Really, really, there were some really frustrating moments where I just was a complete spanner, and he was relying on me in a certain situation to do something, because that for him was the complete logical, rational thing to do. There was nothing else that I could possibly have chosen to do in that moment. Nothing else could possibly have made sense, and yet, like a donut, I just did the complete wrong thing, and I lost us the round or lost us the game or something. But yeah, it was like a long process. But I finally kind of his knowledge finally rubbed off on me, and I'm for a while I was a pretty good Counter Strike player.
so here's a question that ties into the topic, right? if you think about the earliest, like your earliest memories, the first games that you remember playing, and think about obviously, because if we're going to be talking about changes, then that's going to be like the starting point. So if you think about like the earliest games you remember playing and compare that to the types of games that you play now, or just not necessarily like the types of games because you've changed like your decision of what you want to play, but just the way that games have changed. Uh, how much do you think your understanding of that is based on the fact that you've grown up and you've seen more over time? And how much do you think is the fact that the games themselves have changed, and in what way?
It's a really tough question. So let's start off with probably the earliest game that I can remember playing and actually playing myself and not just watching my brothers and barely being able to remember it, like Dukes of
Yeah.
Hazzard,
Or pretending to
or
play.
pretending to play, is
Yeah.
Pokemon Blue. So it's probably the first game that I had that was mine, and I was able to play it as much as I wanted. And my knowledge of that game at the time, I kind of made steady progress. I think I told you about being lost in Rock Tunnel for weeks or whatever. But
Yes, because I did the same.
um,
I went in without flash.
but uh, the way it's changed compared to, okay, so one thing definitely hasn't changed, and that is I believe the same is true when I started playing Final Fantasy VIII. A lot of my experience when playing video games is in my own imagination. So this is what impressed me so much when you said just earlier about how you integrated video games into non-video games, because that
Yeah,
requires a lot of imagination to include various, abstract worlds into one kind of controlled system. I don't know how controlled it was, but I imagine it was a fairly controlled system, knowing you at least, or knowing you
right.
now as an adult. But a lot of when I play video games is in my own head with my own imagination. So when I played Final Fantasy VIII or when I played Pokemon, I saw a really simplistic world, let's say in Pallet Town. There are just three houses. How is that a town? Makes no sense. But in my mind, I fleshed it out and I added more things and I kind of imagined who Gary was. I imagined who Gary's sister was. Or was that her mum? I think it's his sister.
I,
Um,
I
and it,
think it's his mother.
or his mum, whatever.
I think so.
In any case, I filled in the blanks. My mind really. So this is when, as soon as I stopped playing, and my mind wasn't focused on, the task at hand, leveling up a Pokemon or doing kind of a quest, catching a rare Pokemon. My mind would be filling in the blanks, and I can say wholeheartedly that this is something that I still do today. So that definitely hasn't changed, and that I think is despite efforts to, I don't know, despite efforts of multiplayer games especially to remove that kind of immersion. And I will attribute it mostly to, kind of customization and the way the games are prepared. So if okay, as an example, um, if I'm playing a World War II themed multiplayer game and somebody's running around with a pink gun with a golden something on it, then that's just idiotic, and my immersion is gone. And even if it's, so say in my mind, I'm running around just shooting people, shooting zombies even. Okay, zombies, let's leave that out. But if I'm just running around shooting people in an online multiplayer game, and in my mind my mind is kind of, even if it's faintly adding to the world, adding to my experience by imagining scenarios, like scenarios of combat, or where the place could be in the world, and then somebody runs around with a pink gun, it just kind of shatters it. I understand this is very, very particular and very strange. Probably people don't think in these terms, but that's that's definitely something that has changed. but that doesn't mean that my mind doesn't do it. That I don't keep trying to imagine these new things or these additional things. And some games are really, really conducive to it. So some games, even like modern ones, really emphasize it.
I think a lot of, I mean, thinking about Pokemon and all that, I think a lot of the time, a lot of complaints about, say, for example, turn-based battles and all that, I think a lot of it boils down to maybe like a lack of imagination or just a lack of unwillingness to like sort of be imaginative at all. Because you get people will say like, "Oh, it's so unrealistic. Why would I wait around for my turn and all that?"
Hmm.
But in my mind, the characters they're not waiting on for the turn. They're just this is just the representation of how the game works.
Oh yeah,
It,
I
it's
remember.
just represent time passing.
I remember think. I remember. I remember talking about Final Fantasy when I was in primary school, and one friend just dismissed it completely and said, "Well, turn-based is stupid because you just have to wait, and that makes no sense. I like running around and hitting." And I thought you're a
Yeah.
bloody caveman. Um,
Well, the thing is that when I first was introduced to Final Fantasy VIII, as you know, I mean, this every episode has to have a Final Fantasy VIII reference. It has to happen.
and we're
When
waiting
I
for the other
was,
reference as well. There will be another one.
yeah, yeah. Let's see if that one comes around. But when when I first saw Final Fantasy VIII, and again, this was after Pokemon and everything. To me, the fact it was turn-based made it feel. I've talked about this last time, just before the call went all to pot and we had to keep
Hmm.
reloading and everything. But it was the same. It it was the same with Final Fantasy VIII, where the fact it was turn-based made it feel special to me. Like this was a serious, like a thinker's game. You've got to think about things.
Hmm.
You've got to really take your actions seriously. It's like, look, we're not going to rush you. We're not going to say that you have to do a certain thing. We're not going to say that you have to press buttons at the right time. We're going to present you all your options in front of you, and you have to choose, you have to decide what you want to do, and everything is based on your choice. And to me, that was like an enhancement of freedom.
Hmm.
What people say, like, oh, I've got to stand around and wait.
Yeah. Well, there is another thing actually that changed, and if we're talking about the Final Fantasy series,
Yeah,
in particular, so something that I didn't quite get is, oh, well, I never really experienced the 2D uh, Final Fantasy games. I only experienced those when I was older. So my first one in reality was seven, um, that I saw with my own two eyes when I was young. Seven, eight, and nine, or actually seven, nine, and then eight. I believe that was in that order, perhaps.
right.
Um, Mainly because I remember seeing my cousins play Final Fantasy 9. Um, and that is pre-rendered backgrounds. So in Final Fantasy 7, 8, and
Yeah,
9, you don't have 3D worlds, you have pre-rendered backgrounds. And if you compare games made by the same studio at the same time, one of which was fully 3D, and the other one was with pre-rendered backgrounds, well, if you compare Final Fantasy 8 to um, Vagrant Story has a fully 3D world, so that when you look around, when you move around the world, um, like I said, it's a fully rendered 3D setting. But the visual quality, the fidelity, and the art, I believe, well, the art is held back by the quality of it simply because of how restrictive the hardware was, and that's something I don't quite get. I mean, I think maybe it's easier. Maybe it's easier, for example, if you make one pot. Let's say you make a pot that appears in various levels, various scenes. If you design the pot in a 3D program, well, that's just it. You can use this pot many times. Whereas if you have to paint a pre-rendered background with this pot, although that's not the case, because then you could just build a 3D world and then take a screenshot with modern technology. In any case, the point is, I always felt that when I saw Final Fantasy X, and Final Fantasy X too. Yeah, it looked nice. Yeah, it had yeah, you could move around and you could see different things in the world, but I still kind of preferred the pre-rendered backgrounds. And
Yeah,
I don't quite understand. Maybe it's just old fart complains at, modern stuff, but it could also be that it had some charm to it, or it had, or for a while, definitely. Like I said, with Vagrant Story, it was the superior graphical solution.
yeah. Well, I like the, and I think people. I think the thing is with pre-rendered backgrounds is that they really fit, they really suit a purpose, because with those PS1 Final Fantasy games, you're not going to be like running around and jumping on things, so you don't really need to know like exact distances from 2 points or whatever.
Hmm.
It's just the scenery. It's
Hmm.
like this is the place that I'm passing through.
Yeah. And for example, okay, so a city that makes no sense in Final Fantasy VIII from I think, yeah, from the city that doesn't make any sense from the pre-rendered backgrounds is Delling City.
Yeah,
So when you walk around Delling City and then you see the 3D model of Delling City, what it's supposed to be like, and in some of the cutscenes, the places that you visit in with those pre-rendered backgrounds, like the direction that you head, obviously they've cut either at best they've cut out a lot of what you see with the pre-rendered backgrounds, or at worst they just simply didn't really care and they just did it willy-nilly and they just thought, kids won't notice. Um, but at the same time, that just means my mind filled in the blanks of what Delling City was like. So in one background, for example, I think it's when you leave Caraway's mansion and then you go towards the center, you cut through this park where you can draw Blizzara.
yeah. Is it got like the holograms? Have I
Yes,
got that
in the
right?
background
Yeah,
it has the holograms and it has the big kind of the blow up characters. So the
yeah.
holograms are on the sky and the blow up characters are in the background. See, in my mind, I just imagined, and you can go there, and it's like a big park, and it's like an event. There are probably going to be stages. There are probably going to be lots of people there, and that was fine that I couldn't go there. And maybe there is a problem of a lack of imagination, but I don't think. Okay, so let's say there is an issue that the gamers these days they don't want to do too much imagining. They want just to experience. It's kind of like reading a book versus watching a film. Watching a Hollywood film, I should say. Hollywood's kind of notorious for this. Um, where when you watch the film, your mind is just blank. You're just experiencing pictures and sounds coming from a box. Whereas when you read a book, your mind is doing a lot of work. Your mind is really, really, to use a fun term, hauling ass, uh, trying to really going out of its out of its way to entertain you. And I think it's not a case of people are just idiots now, and we weren't when we were kids. It's not just a case of old farts complaining. I think it's just conditioning. So we've been conditioned not to have to use our brains in this way when playing games or when watching films.
See, the thing is, like the comparisons to books, is that I'm not a fan of books at all. I never have been. Even like if I think about like when we had to read books in school, the problem I had was that I didn't. I often felt like I was missing. Maybe I'm just like more of a visual learner, I guess. But I always felt like I was constantly missing more information, like loads of information. I'd just be, I'd be sat there and I'm thinking, where are they? What's going on? Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? There's these bits of information that it's like I couldn't account for. Whereas with a film, it's like I sort of have that information, so I feel like I'm more grounded in my understanding,
Hmm.
I suppose.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how to. I don't know how to. I'm not going to even try to defend my position. It's just different. You just experience stories differently from me.
Yeah.
Book.
Um,
I don't have an issue at all when I read a book and let's say the author hasn't revealed a piece of information that might make sense in this, that might be required for me to understand something. You just can kind of continue reading.
well, the thing is, though, is that the author might have revealed it. I just probably haven't taken the information in.
Hmm. Fair enough. But in video games, do you feel that it's um, do you feel the same as me that the player is not there isn't as much of a requirement on the player to use their imagination while playing?
Yeah, I would say so. I think one big factor of that is graphics,
Hmm.
with the way that everything looks like more realistic and stuff. Um, I can imagine there'll be people around today who will see like 2D games and think, well, this doesn't make sense. Why can't I go like in and out rather than just left and right?
Hmm.
Well, this is just like it's just this is just what the game's like. It's not. It doesn't. They don't have to. I mean, maybe this is me taking a completely different approach to like with books. I don't know, but I think well, they don't have to account for that because it's not relevant.
Hmm.
It's
Well,
just
let's take Level Up Land 1, for example,
oh,
and
here we
2
go.
to an extent.
Yep, there's either example.
Level Up Land 1, when I played it, it wasn't an issue for me at all that
Yep.
you don't see the physical representation of Levi Lupa, Level Upper.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't see him. He's just a white square, and that's not a problem. The same the same that it's not a problem that you don't see, you know, what the Kraken looks like, because my mind can imagine, my imagination is able to draw a picture of the Kraken and a picture of, you know, Levi using all of these spells in order to defeat the Kraken and then being slain by the Kraken and returning and, you know, waking up at the, or loading a previous
Yeah.
save from the pier. It's That's not an issue. I
Yeah.
think it'd be nice if it was there, and that's not to say that it needs to be photorealistic and done by a, you know, by a professional AAA team of, you know, 100 artists. If you have something on the level of Pokemon, which is what you did with Level Up Plan 2, where you have silhouettes of the main characters and silhouettes of all the enemies, that really goes a long way. And I don't think it's enough, to be honest, in Level Up Plan 2. The art of Level Up Plan 2 isn't enough to keep the attention of, you know, a kid these days who
Yeah.
is, you know, expecting Forza Horizon 5 levels of graphical fidelity from a game
Yeah.
made by one person. It's I don't know, if Level Up Land 1 does one thing very well, it's how well its enemies were thought out, how well the enemies were thought out, yeah. um and everything else is not as important. Yeah, it does bear importance, but it isn't as important. Um, but just it'd be nice if, you know, we could use our imaginations to fill in the blanks.
Yeah. Well, I think if we do talk about like in regards to like turn-based games, people say, "Oh, they're just standing around." In my mind, I don't feel so much as just like, "Oh, use your imagination." It's it's just inherently strange to me that people don't.
Hmm.
That people would see that and take it absolutely literally.
Yeah,
That seems rather strange to me.
actually, something that's happened recently. Final Fantasy VII Remake was released on PC, and
Right.
I bought it for my brother for his birthday. He got an early birthday present, and I'm really intrigued as to what he'll say because I actually have no clue. I don't think he's in the camp of everything should be turn-based, nor is he in the camp of, you know, let's just move on from turn-based games. He doesn't actually have that much experience with Final Fantasy VII, I believe. I don't think he knows story all that well, so that he's not going to be necessarily offended by the way by the direction they took it. And so both from the story perspective and from the gameplay perspective, I think it might be quite interesting for him. And I really want to find out what he thinks. So um, he probably isn't as obsessed with Final Fantasy VIII as I am or I was. But Final Fantasy VIII definitely is what he sees as Final Fantasy. So when he played Final Fantasy 16, sorry, not 16, when he played Final Fantasy 15, um, he didn't. He compared it to Final Fantasy VIII and said, "Yeah, Final Fantasy VIII was more his thing," but it's not as though he completely dismissed it.
Yeah. I also, and I know I'm sticking on this topic a lot, but it's just something that's come to mind. When it comes to like turn-based games and all that, you you don't see them as much these days, but online there's always been like these parody videos where people act out turn-based battles.
Hmm.
You've probably seen like one or two of them where they'll walk around and then they'll, like actual actors will stand there and walk up to an enemy and attack and then walk back to their spot and all that.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, it's just like an RPG. And that's strange to me because that doesn't look like, and again, this goes back to the whole imagination thing. That doesn't look like how I picture these games.
Hmm. So actually, I don't know. Have you ever watched? Did you ever watch Advent Children, Final Fantasy VII?
Yes, I've seen it.
So Final Fantasy VII is a turn-based game, and you do use your imagination a lot when you watch those battles. And in Advent Children, there was the big battle in the city with the weird thing. I can't remember.
It was
There
it
was a
was
big battle in the city with the weird thing. And all the
yeah,
characters took part, and they all did their own little thing, and they all had their moment in the spotlight. But it was mainly Cloud doing the swishy swashy with his swords.
yeah,
And then those three weirdos who are talking about Mother and the reunion or whatever. Um, well, that's kind of to an extent how I imagined this. Okay, put it this way. Maybe not personally, but I can understand or I can see how that's how people imagined role-playing games. So, or turn-based, sorry. Okay, let me try and word this a little bit better. So the way that battle played out, where the characters all fought this big thing, and not necessarily they all just attacked him in the center, in the same exact center point where, the animations are rigged to attack. They did actually, one of them attacked the guy's leg, the other one attacked his head and stuff like that. That's how I imagined, or that's how I can perceive other people imagined the turn-based fights taking place in their minds. So the turn-based was very simplistic, but in their minds it was a very elaborate assault on this, big bad enemy, and they actually kind of showed it in the game. Sorry, in the film. Um, and I thought that was quite neat. But when I watched some footage of Final Fantasy VII Remake, it seemed a little bit as though they saw like the success of the battle scenes from Advent Children and thought, yeah, let's recreate this in the game. And so they tried to make the battles in the game far more elaborate. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, they tried to make it look more elaborate, but in the process, they took away so much from the player because the player, instead of controlling Cloud and Barrett versus the Scorpion, and you choose your attacks and they attack together and you kind of use strategy that way. They changed the let me think of the right word for this. They changed the style, or they changed the character of the fight to make it slightly different. And if I remember correctly, I think the Scorpion like jumps on the walls and stuff like that. There's all sorts of crazy stuff. Brilliant. It looks fantastic. And I was happy to watch it. And I think I watched Mule play, Gaming Mule 88. I watched him play the demo at least of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and some of it during his streams, and it looked fantastic. But I just felt, yeah, I probably wouldn't want to play it.
Yeah, I remember seeing the scorpion jumping on the wall and stuff. I just thought, this is over the top. This is like the first boss in the game. Just, you know what? If it's just like in like an arena and the characters are just like running around a bit, that's that's fine by me.
Yeah. Well, uh, I don't know. I recall actually when I played Forza Horizon 5, we're going back to Forza Horizon again.
Yeah.
After I played it for a few hours, I sent a message to one of my friends, to that friend who taught me how to play Counter-Strike, and I just said, I think it went something along the lines of, video games aren't designed for me anymore. So I'm not the target audience, and I fully accept that. I'm happy to accept that. I really, really am far from who the target audience is.
Yeah. I was thinking, um, you know, when it comes to like imaginations of how fights go and all that, um, when it comes to like visual combat, to be honest, I've always found it rather boring. Like if I'm watching a film or a TV series and there's a big fight scene, to me that's like my mind just goes off. Like, oh, I'm not interested. Get back to the characters talking about things.
Hmm.
That's what I want to see. When they're jumping around and they're shooting or whatever, it's like my mind goes blank. And I was thinking again, going back to Level Up Land, as we do, Level Up Land 2, the way I was thinking about that is like the way I contextualize that. Because you know, one thing that's particular about Level Up Land 2 is that your characters will attack just by themselves. You don't do anything, and you can't stop them from attacking. So, say if you see like an enemy and you think, I want to get a load of enhanced spells on this thing, you can't because you're going to be attacking like as
Hmm.
time passes. So you can't really get around that. And my way of thinking about that in my mind is that what's what's going on is that that's the characters like fending the enemies off. Like the enemy like is like getting close to you and to sort of like defend yourself, they like sort of like push them away and that hurts them or something like that.
Hmm.
That's kind of how I interpret that. To go So if I was to answer the question about how things are different from when I first started playing games and all that,
Hmm.
now I started playing games on the Amiga and then the Mega Drive. And what was a big thing to me what was a big thing to me when I eventually like got into it was save files. Because up until the point where I did understand about save files, I didn't really play any games that saved at all. Sonic 3 and Knuckles had a save feature, but aside from that, they existed on the Mega Drive. There were RPGs and there were things like that. But as far as I was aware, a game was just sort of like you load it up, you've got a challenge, you get as far as you can, you do what you can until you either complete it or you get a game over, and then that's the end of that. And the next time you have another go, you start from the beginning. And when I remember when I first discovered on Tekken 2, when I first completed arcade mode with Law and I unlocked Bake, and it's like, oh, hold on, if I've got a memory card, I can keep this data and
Uh-huh.
I'll have Bake forever. And that was like that was like an amazing like thing that was like just like a new thing to me, even though it wasn't a new thing in games in general. Because like I said, you know, there were RPGs before then. But
Just a quick tidbit.
yeah,
I remember when we had, so this is before I played games myself, when I would just watch my brothers. We had Super Mario Brothers 3 on the NES, and I remember whenever they played that, and in the morning before school, they would have to leave the console on all day and just hope nothing crashed or nothing just switched off, or hope that mum or our childminder didn't switch it off by mistake or on purpose, so that when they could get home they could continue from the world that they were on,
yeah.
because it would get reset.
My friend from primary school, the one who I mentioned before, I've mentioned him I've never mentioned him by name, but I've talked about him a few times because he was the one that showed me Final Fantasy 8. He was the one who accidentally overwrote his own save file and then
Yeah.
went into my room and started crying.
Hmm.
He was also one of the one who we did like these games where we like drew mazes and stuff and did game shows and all
Are you
that.
sure you want to name and shame the person who cried in your room?
Well, I'll just say Matthew.
Matthew. Okay.
Yeah, just for
Shout
future
shout out to
reference.
Matthew.
Right, so just for future reference, so you know I'm talking about Matthew. Um, so, gee, what was I talking about? What was I saying?
Overwriting. Sorry, he overwrote his game save, but before you were talking about finally knowing that you could save your game.
Ah, yes, because you were talking about uh people leaving the consoles on
Yes.
uh overnight. I remember one time he had a Master System and he had the Master System version of Sonic 1, and he told me that he like left it on overnight and then continued when he woke up. And I
Hmm.
was thinking to myself, like, oh, didn't you get in trouble?
Hmm.
Like, no, you're being so naughty or whatever. But yeah, that was just a thing. That's a thing that's like really changed about games now. People will say like, oh, isn't it great that you can save games now so you don't have to start at the beginning every single time?
Hmm.
It's like, okay, right? I play RPGs. Of course, I'm happy that you can save games. Of course, that's like a brilliant thing, and I think loads of great games have come about because of it. But I think people look back at those older games and say like, oh, imagine we had to replay those like the early levels over and over again.
Or they would say that those games would be so much better if they had the save function. Well,
Yeah.
they weren't designed for that. Anyway, please go.
Well, yeah, exactly that. I think when people like say if someone plays like Rayman Origins or something, and they get to a certain point and they're like, "Oh, it's so great that I don't have to replay those early levels over and over again." Like, yeah, well, okay, but the game was designed knowing that you've got the save function there anyway, so it's like in a completely different ballpark,
Hmm.
you know? Because with those older games, if you like got through the first level but you got battered in the process, you carry that over. So you've still got to like get better every time. Well, not necessarily better every time, but in general, skills need to improve. And whatever good of a position you find yourself in down the line is based on your performance early on. So you can still, get better and improve and learn as you go. And I think that sort of skill requirement or just like an understanding of the quality of that type of gameplay is lost on a lot of people.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you think players, gamers are impatient these days?
I
So,
think I think it depends because I think for as much as I can say yes because of the example I've just given, there's
hmm.
always going to be examples to the contrary which which aren't like contradictions, they're just different different examples. Like, you've got people who will play like a competitive game and like over a long period of time and slowly improve their skills and just get
Hmm.
better. And I think that takes patience. I think if someone's going to play like an MMO, that definitely takes patience. Or like even just like grinding in an RPG, that takes patience.
Hmm.
Um, so and then I think I don't know. I think the landscape has definitely changed,
Hmm.
but I think when it comes to particular qualities, I don't think the qualities of people have changed. I think it's just the context for which those are apparent to people has changed.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Now I've got the big question.
Okay.
The big question. Do games now equal sad face, while games then equal happy face? Equaled happy face. Can it be?
Well,
Can it be explained in such simple terms?
Probably not.
No.
No, I think I don't think it's right to say games are terrible now. Games used to be
Hmm.
great. I think, I mean, if you were to ask me, about based on my personal experience of all the games that I've seen and been aware of and played in my life, I would say that games gradually, as a whole, got better,
Hmm.
and then they peaked around the late 90s throughout the 2000s, and then they've been declining since then. But there's a lot of factors that go into that. And I think a big factor, but perhaps a big factor that I'm naturally lending too much credence to is the fact that with the internet and everything, we are being made so much more aware of things that are going on like throughout the entire industry.
Hmm.
Whereas if I think back to my PS1 days, it was just a case of here are a bunch of games. This is what video games are.
Hmm. And there
So
was,
I
so I think we've spoken about this before, but it's, I need to underline it because I think it's so important. When you're a kid, or even if you weren't a kid, even if you were an adult back then, in the 90s or the 2000s, and you got a game, it wasn't as common for people who got a game to know immediately everything there is to know about that game because it's all online or because it's all on, the store page. People in the comments have, when if you look for a game on Steam, you just found a random game that you want to buy, that you're thinking of buying because it looks good, and then you read through some of the comments, and some of the comments just immediately outline everything that they believe is good or bad about it, and so you have a very good idea of what's going on. Whereas back then, I remember if I wanted to buy a game, I would ask the person who works in the shop, perhaps, have they played it? And if they have, they'll say, yeah, it's alright, or nah, it's not
yeah
that good. And that'd be
yeah
pretty much pretty much all I'd get out of all the information I'd receive.
yeah. I suppose I remember the thinking back to different like stages of my life and different um different approaches to like getting games and coming into contact with games because like throughout primary school and all that, it was mostly just a case of here's some games at Christmas, have a go. It's like right, okay, and then I end up thinking, yep, games are amazing, this is so fun, yep,
Hmm.
we're gonna do all this. I mean, there were a few points where I was interested in something. I specifically remember wanting one of the Street Fighter 2 games on the Mega Drive, and sometimes like I'd see like if we go shopping, like with my mum, I'd see like just like a game in a shop, and like I think I did this with Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening,
Hmm.
and there was one time, my friend Matthew, he he once like knocked on my door. I said, "Oh, we're going out," and he went, "You should get Pokemon. It's good." And I'm like, "Okay." And then that was all I knew. And then we went out, went to I think it was Woolworths.
Woolworths, that's where you got
Yeah,
Pokemon. I remember
yeah.
that was the place to get Pokemon. Anyway,
Have I told you? I told you the story about getting Pokemon? I think I might have told you.
perhaps I think I've forgotten
Yeah.
now.
Well, we went to Wolves and I saw that there was red and blue version, and it was
Hmm.
like, well, oh, I don't know what does this mean? And I think we asked like the cashier,
Hmm.
saying, "Oh, there's red and blue. What's this about?" And I don't know, like I think she might have like looked at the box or something, or and she was like, "Oh, well, there's different Pokemon each one. So if you've got a friend with the other like
Hmm.
a different color one, then you can swap and get the ones that are on that game." And I remember thinking to myself, like just instinctively, I remember thinking to myself, most people are going to get blue. I just felt that blue was
Hmm.
the one that most people would get, so I'm like, right, I'm going to get red. And
Genius.
yeah, so Well, that genius carried over to when I actually started playing it and thought, Charmander, Squirtle, or Bulbasaur, you can either attack with fire, water, or grass. Like, well, obviously fire, because what's water and grass going to do?
Hmm.
That was like my legitimate like thought. I didn't
Yeah.
think to myself, oh, they're going to balance the game
Hmm.
and like theme these things.
Hmm.
It was just I was literally thinking like, is a bit of grass on the floor and a bit of rain as dangerous as fire? Obviously not. So obviously choose Charmander.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew nothing about that game going in. I got it. So Charizard on the box, and in my mind it was like, oh, it's going to be like a side-scrolling game where I'm gonna
Hmm.
like fly around on this dragon. And I played it; it was completely different. And I was like, oh, this is so different to what I thought it was going to be, and it's really, really good.
Hmm. Have you ever had an experience of explaining a video game or showing a video game to a really staunchly non-video game person, to somebody who really dislikes games or who really just isn't interested?
I'm most likely um I have had times like when I was younger, I have had times where I have talked to people like about games and stuff, and I look back and I'm thinking they obviously weren't interested at all.
Hmm.
I was wasting my time. What was I thinking?
So I've got two memories. One is my brothers and I were showing Grand Theft Auto Vice City to our dad
Yeah.
when we were obviously below the age of 18, and we
Oh
shouldn't have
yeah.
had this game. And just our dad is like a really traditional, well, was back then. Nowadays he's really relaxed, but back then he was like a really traditional guy, and wasn't, he didn't want us watching films that had violence. He didn't want us doing this, that, and the other. But at the same time, he was, really busy, work and all that kind of stuff. So he wasn't able to control everything that we did. And
Yeah.
I just remember for some reason we wanted to show him it, and we gave him a sniper rifle, and we said, just aim and shoot somebody. And obviously, if I think about it now as an adult, kids telling our dad, who's like a more Christian and very non-aggressive. Yeah, and I just remember the one thing he said was he really struggled with, the mechanics of moving around the analog sticks and aiming. And by the time he got the aim just right, the person had walked past him. And he just said, I refuse to shoot somebody in the back. That's not honorable. And so I don't think he ever did get around to shooting somebody because he couldn't do it quick enough, and he refused to shoot them in the back.
Oh, there's a lot of like innocence there,
Yeah,
isn't
there
it?
is.
Like,
And but bless him, he tried. He saw that his
yeah,
kids were interested in something, and he gave it a go. He wasn't very good, but
yeah.
you
Well,
can't fault him.
oh, you do sometimes like look back at like you look back at these things and you just think to yourself like, what was I thinking? But you're obviously like you're in a completely different frame of mind.
Yeah.
Like I was, it's like a frame of mind that you can't relate to. I remember when I played Sonic, when I got Sonic 2, and I was like really into when I got like a Mega Drive and Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 from my uncle for one Christmas. I was really into Sonic. And one day I managed to get all of the Chaos Emeralds in Sonic 2 because I'd done it
Hmm.
all in Sonic 1, right? And it was like, yeah, you get the ending where all the plants turn a different color and he jumps in the air and everything. It's like, yep, very nice. And then I was playing through Sonic 2, and then it was like, right, well, I can complete it, but let's try and get all the Chaos Emeralds, like the next step. And one day I managed to do it, and it's really hard. Like these special stages, you have to like know what's coming most of the time. I must have just like memorized it without thinking, without like knowing about it, just after so much exposure to this game. Which again goes back to what I was saying before about how like these older games, there's a value in you don't go in thinking I'm going to win this. You just sort
Hmm.
of keep playing and you learn. So I got all of the Chaos Emeralds, and then it came up with a message that said Sonic can now play as. I think it said something like you can now play as Super Sonic, or like
Hmm.
Sonic can now be Super Sonic. And this, I think, if we're talking about like pivotal gaming moments in our life, this was a big one for me in my early stages of life because this is my first memory of feeling like I've truly discovered something deep within like the creases of this game. Like I've played this game for so long, and here's like a new thing that I've unlocked that I've never seen before. And I'm thinking, what Supersonic? Oh, I can't believe it. Oh, this is amazing. And I was playing. I'm thinking, what is Supersonic? What's going to happen? And then one time, I jumped and I turned into Supersonic. And I don't know how familiar you are, but basically, Supersonic. The only difference with Supersonic is that um, you're invincible in terms of like you kill enemies if you walk up to them and you don't get hurt by spikes.
Hmm.
You and you go faster, and your rings start to deplete. And when they get to zero, you turn back into regular Sonic.
Hmm.
You can only turn into Supersonic once you've hit 50 rings, and you do it when you jump. And so I remember I was in Mystic Cave Zone. At one point, I jumped, and I could pull this like face, right? It's sort of like a Super Saiyan transformation
Hmm.
sort of thing, and it was bizarre to me because like I was so familiar with these sprites, like these individual like images of Sonic and Tails and all that, and then suddenly there's this new one of him transforming into Supersonic,
Hmm.
and I was like amazed by it. I was like, oh, this is Supersonic. But at the back of my mind, it was like it was an adrenaline rush because I
Hmm.
was scared of the way he transformed. I found it like I found it scary, like very uneasy. And so it was like I liked playing as Supersonic, but I didn't like becoming Supersonic.
Hmm.
So so one day I I said to my mum, I said, like, okay, I'm I like Supersonic, but I don't like seeing him become Supersonic.
Hmm.
So I've unlocked all the Chaos Emeralds. I'm on like the second last stage with like however many lives. And I give the controller to my mum and I say, right, you play until you become Supersonic. And I came back in and I'm like, are you Supersonic? Like, no. And I saw like my lives had jumped down to like two. And I
Uh-huh.
just thought, oh, forget it. I'll just be scared. But yeah, I just think,
Kids
like,
are weird.
yeah. It's just what,
Your
what was I
your
thinking?
poor mum.
Yeah. Ah.
What did she go through?
Yeah. So obviously I didn't see her playing because I didn't want to see her become supersonic. But
Yeah.
thing is, to become supersonic, you have to get 50 rings, and this is
Hmm.
like the second last level, which is like this sky base, like
Hmm.
in the sky, and you got like all these platforms. And it's like obviously she was never going to collect 50 rings.
Hmm.
Yeah. Ah.
So, do we have? Did you have anything else that you wanted to bring up? Do you have any other
Um,
questions?
I'm not sure. Uh, actually, okay. Is there any genre specific based games, or well, particularly not genre based games, but any genres where you feel like this genre has gone through a particular change? Because I've gone through, for example, like with those like old games, but that's mostly like platform games.
Hmm.
So if you think like say fighting games or racing games, is there anything about those games that have changed over time?
Um, well, you got to remember that my experiences with video games in general is a lot more limited than yours. Very
I
limited.
know, I know.
But if racing games is something I've been quite exposed to,
Yeah,
and I think, yeah, so this is going to be going to link back to my old complaint
yeah.
uh, about microtransactions. But I don't know. I think racing games have improved so much. They are incredible now. If I compare, uh, what is it called? It was on the Mega Drive. It was a racing game. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a fake 3D one. It was 2D, and like the
Right.
Formula One car kind of turns left and right. Or it might not even been Mega Drive. Might have even been NES, to be honest.
Okay.
In any case, going from that kind of visual quality, but not only that, just the controls and the physics and everything, to what we have today is incredible. And you can see it improving from the days of 2D graphics to the early 3D and to what we have today, which is photorealism with ray tracing and with all sorts of other doodads. Something that actually, a development of racing games that I figured would be absolutely incredible. I've asked a friend who's really interested in VR, and has said that VR racing games in VR just really nausea-inducing, and he can't stand them. Even though in real
Yeah.
life he's a really keen driver. He has a fancy car, and he really enjoys you know cars. He can't play racing games with VR. That's what I find interesting. So I thought that'd be absolutely perfect because you're in your cockpit. If you look around, you can see around the vehicle.
I was just thinking, in terms of racing games, and I suppose this links back to, although in a completely different context, the thing you were saying before about pre-rendered backgrounds
Hmm.
versus like fully modeled worlds. Because when you look at those early racing games, the track doesn't actually like exist as a actual thing.
Hmm.
If you know what I mean, it's just you get the visual representation of going left and right,
Yes.
and just an occasional. It's like there's a state of the world that changes that's visually represented by the road turning,
Hmm.
and the effect it has on you is that you need to like turn with it, but there's no physical world that exists for you to race on. It's just an
Mm.
ever-changing state needing to turn left and right.
Yeah. And it's really simplistic, and going back to that, having okay, so let's say racing games in 2022. Recent racing games that I've played for has Forza Horizon 5, Project Cars 2. Those aren't like cutting edge, there are newer ones, but those are the most recent ones I play, considering I don't play many games or many different games. If I try to go back to those old titles, really, really old ones, I can't. It's so difficult for me to play them now. And I mean, I think those games were very difficult back then as well. But it's difficult for me to play them, and I just think, well, I could play so much. The new ones are actually so much better. What's the point in going back to these old ones? But if I go back 10 years or 15 years to the PS2 era, or even the PS1 era, while those games have physics models, so the way the cars feel, while those physics models are simpler, the actual, like what you just said, there is a 3D representation of the world. You are actually traveling around in a physical space. It does make sense as a racing game, even if it isn't as refined as the new ones.
Yeah,
And so for that reason, I can go back to those and play them. And to be honest, I prefer some of them, not necessarily because they're simpler. I prefer them because they are more, I don't know, I feel there's a little bit more to them. So something that has happened. I don't think this is as relevant to Forza because Forza, I don't know if the team is just absolutely huge, the team that works on those. But if you compare Gran Turismo 2 or 3 or 4 to the new one, so not so much 3, but 2 and 4 definitely, they had loads and loads of different cars. Admittedly, some of the cars were just, it's like a Toyota Yaris that has a special color, and that's counted as a different car, and that's what they've added up into their total one, even though the model and the physical properties are exactly the same. Just it's in like purple, and it's like the Toyota Yaris Purple Edition, and it's
yeah,
fantastic. But the older games seem to have more variety in the vehicles, more vehicles in general, especially in the Gran Turismo series. Um, on for the reason that they were easier to do, perhaps because they didn't have to be as graphically intensive.
When I think of PS1 racing games, if we're talking about the more realistic-y ones, the two that well, no, I think I had more than two, but the two that I mostly remember in that particular category are Rallycross and V Rally.
Hmm.
And I was just talking about like the cars exist in a
Hmm.
like in a physical world, and I remember with Rallycross, the cars would just like bounce all over the place, and it's the thing is like I think like I've watched videos. Rallycross is interesting. Um, have you ever played Rallycross or seen Rallycross?
Yeah.
Well, Rallycross is interesting in that it's one of those games where I can't imagine it would be all that great, and I have seen like videos of it recently, and like the music can be really good sometimes, and it seems decent enough, but it's it's an example of one of those games that really maybe captures the spirit isn't the right turn of phrase, but it
Hmm.
really gives me a sense of nostalgia for a certain PS1 like quality
Hmm.
of like playing. It's one of those things where it's like I've got a feeling, but I can't describe the feeling in words. It's like
Is
a
is
certain
pa- is part of it the visuals? Do you think?
uh maybe,
Because the
but
PS1 has loads of charm when it comes to visuals.
yeah,
It's not uncommon to feel loads of nostalgia for the PS1.
I do think also though a lot of it comes with the visuals of the menu screen because
Uh-huh.
PS1, a lot of like PS1 era menu screens are very sort of like pre-rendered backgrounds. They're not very interactive, like there isn't much movement going on,
Hmm.
but there's a lot of detail in the imagery.
Hmm.
So you'll go through like many screens where there's like a detailed like picture
Hmm.
and the menu like the words like in like 3D text and all that. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot of that PS1 era charm to Rallycross.
Hmm.
I'm sure I get plenty of games, but it's just that when I think of Rallycross, I definitely think of that charm
Hmm.
that I can't really put into words.
Well,
But this is just like it's a nostalgia thing, isn't it?
I should say, nostalgia aside, I think racing games have developed tremendously.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think. Okay, so now if I move on to something that I am most familiar with, which is shooting games, they've changed a lot, but fundamentally, what has improved is how much stuff is in them. That's probably the easiest way for me to describe it. So shooting games now have more stuff. There's more visual stuff going on. Um, for example, the worlds are more detailed. You can see when you fire a bullet, the bullet hole. You know, when you fire, let's say you shoot at a piece of wood, the wood might splinter now into tiny little pieces, and you can see those little pieces in the world because our computers are so powerful now. Consoles are so powerful that they can actually show this on screen, whereas back in there they couldn't. Um, but at the same time, I don't think necessarily um, they've improved so much in terms of gameplay. So
What
yeah.
I was gonna say when I think of because I've never really been into first person shooters.
Hmm.
Well, not the first one I remember, obviously, but the first one I remember putting any amount of time in, and it was like I never had the console for it, but I knew somebody who did, and the childcare centre I used to go to that I've talked about the one I talked about last time where they played Lincoln Park.
Mm-hmm.
They had an N64, so they had GoldenEye
Mm-hmm.
there. So that's one of those games where it's treated like an old classic, but to me, it's always been a sort of a game that exists outside of my own sphere that I'm
Mm-hmm.
still that I happen to have been subjected to.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm getting at is uh there is there are improvements. Okay, there is, like I said, there's more stuff. In terms of gameplay, they kind of went down two routes. So, first person shooter games kind of, this is just my really uneducated opinion. They kind of went two ways. First way is they turned into big interactive movies, and this is Call of Duty before Call of Duty, decided to ditch single player modes. Although I think they brought them back again. So in Call of Duty, the player doesn't actually have to do too much thinking. All you're doing is clicking and shooting, clicking and shooting. That's kind of it. There are no role playing elements. There are no decisions. There are no, tactics really to be spoken of. It's like a shooting gallery, and you're there for the ride. Or you have games like Doom, the newer Doom games, where there are so many things for you to be juggling at the same time. For example, when you're fighting a boss in Doom, that's just it. It's like a boss. It's not just, another humanoid enemy that you can just fire a few times, fire a few bullets at, and he'll be dead, and that's it. You move on. Doom allows itself to have a boss with minions. You have to manage the minions while you're working away at the boss, and so there's a lot more going on. Um, and if you compare that to older games, perhaps older games were very similar in terms of gameplay, just slightly less of everything going on, and that's probably down to hardware. But
I just
especially, okay, continue.
No, I was just going to say that I remember it sort of reminded me of the Total Biscuit video of Medal of Honor Warfighter, I think it was, where there's a part where if you don't do anything, you get shot, but you get shot so slowly that you just heal it all back all the time and nothing
Uh-huh.
ever matters. And if you step too far out of line before um doing the thing that you're supposed to do according to the story, you'll just get headshot and die.
Mm-hmm.
Like the instant you step out of line.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be like the cinematic style.
Yeah, that's it. You're along for the ride. I really like. Okay, so something. This is a little bit off topic now, or very off topic. Something I really enjoy, I really enjoy doing is uh, finding strange ways to to complete tasks in games. And
Yeah.
so, especially in this Delta Force game that I played, when you spend a bit of time designing levels yourself, you you find that people have you find that some maps have basically a very generic win condition. And by that I mean what actually needs to happen for you to win and reach the success or victorious or good job screen, as opposed to either spend eternity running around like a headless chicken, or have the you lose screen.
Yeah.
So some in in Delta Force, quite often it just happened to be, if player is in this location then win. And so the game stops being, you're in for the cinematic ride, you have to go here, you have to meet with these people, you have to blow up this ship, and then you have to go here and blah blah blah. The game becomes, how can I avoid dying from these landmines in order to run to the game? Because let's say you're supposed to be transported via helicopter to the game win position. Well, how can I get to that game win position without dying to landmines, without enemies shooting me, and without doing this, that, and the other? And that's something I really enjoy doing, and you just really can't do that in the in the shooting gallery kind of cinematic games. Like you said with the Warfighter, you just step one, 1 meter out the wrong way, and that's it. You're gone because the game doesn't want
Yeah.
you to be there.
You just made me think then. I remember when again, Matthew, when he first showed me Armored Core, and most of the missions were that you had to defeat all the enemies. And to me, I remember thinking like that was quite like new and unusual because I was used to this idea that enemies were just like a thing in the way that you have to get past. And if that means destroying them, then that's like one way to go about it. Or you could just like go around them or whatever. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that was quite a new and unique thing. But then I'm thinking, well, hang on, no, because I also played a few beat 'em ups, like Streets of Rage and Golden Axe, where like you take a few steps forward and you have to kill all your enemies before you can go to the next screen.
Hmm. Yeah, I really don't like that. I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
I think it's just for ease of programming, to be honest. Just to make sure. I don't know, not programming, level design. Because
yeah, well,
if the condition is, oh yeah, you just have to go here, beat up all these dudes, and then move on, then it's just simple.
yeah. Well, maybe doesn't necessarily mean that how you do that is simple.
Yeah, but what I mean is from the perspective of the designer, it just makes the job a lot easier as opposed to having, complex conditions.
Suppose I know what you mean.
Right,
Yeah,
we've been talking for 1 hour and 51 minutes,
right.
and it's 11 p.m. over here, and I am boiling.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It is.
I think I need to call it.
Yeah. My room has throughout the course of this call has gotten dark.
It's gotten dark. Hmm.
Yeah,
Mine's gotten really, really hot, and
yeah.
I have this small fan that Ella got me, and I can't turn it on because it's really noisy. So the moment I click stop recording and end the call, or end the call, then click stop recording, that fan is coming on and it's going to call me.
Right.
So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
I went a little bit off topic near the end, as usual, but we
Yeah,
managed to get the
it's all right.
you managed to get the Final Fantasy VIII and the Level Up Land references in on on uh, on
I
on
mean,
target.
the question is what's more important that we stay on topic or that we mention Final Fantasy VIII Level Up Land? Because I think we probably mentioned Final Fantasy VIII Level Up Land in like this is episode 7 now. I think we've done that every single time.
Yeah, but
Whereas, yeah,
it's just
yeah,
why is it bad? Why is it a bad thing?
no, it's not a bad thing. It's just what we both mutually know about, isn't it? That's what it is.
It's
But it's just,
interesting. I feel okay. I feel in this arrangement when we're talking about video games, I feel as though I'm really not knowledgeable at all, and I'm talking to somebody who is really knowledgeable. And so when I'm answering questions, all I draw upon is my own experiences, which is all I can do, really. I don't want to speculate on things that I don't know anything about. And that's just
well,
it. When I'm trying to explain something, easiest to use something that we both have in common.
yeah. Well, you know what, right? When I don't think to myself, "Oh, this is an idiot who knows nothing about games." I,
Bloody
that's not
idiot! I've got to talk to that idiot again.
all I think of is, well, he plays racing games and shooters a lot, so he'll probably have examples that pertain to those.
Yeah,
That's all I think, really.
yeah. And you carefully navigate it around the topic of microtransactions because you don't want it to. What is it? I said it a few times, but I said it incorrectly. I think it's old man shouts at cloud. That's the
Old
Simpsons
man yells
reference.
at cloud.
Old man
Yeah,
yells at cloud. Yeah, that's how
yeah,
I feel like.
yeah. But I mean, I shared the sentiments on microtransactions completely. I just didn't want it to be like, let's talk about that for an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Anyway,
it's been
thank you very
good.
much.
All right. Yes, thank you.
Uh, next week, next weekend, we're the preparations for coming over to to England will be on in full swing. We're over on Monday, next Monday, not this Monday coming, in a week on Monday.
Right.
And so I don't think I'll be up for a call next weekend.
Yeah, I probably won't, I'm working late anyway, so I probably wouldn't have been able to anyway.
All right, well, have a good evening, the rest of it,
Yeah, and
and
you
enjoy your
too.
weekend.
Shall do. Bye.
Bye bye.